So, you find yourself suddenly surrounded by the decaying remains of your fellow classmates. You stumble backwards in fear and shock as the reality of your situation comes crashing down and the mounting fear of your imminent death very much becomes a reality. But not for these high school girls, they have plot armor. In this video, we're going to follow the girls at the school living club and do our best to beat the unbreathing horde in Gakkou-Gurashi. Every day seems to be rainbows and sunshine for Yuki Takia, resident of Maguri-Gaoka Private High School, but behind the surface all is not what it seems. She, along with her teacher Megune, and her three friends Miki, Yuri, and Karumi, and as well as her dog Toromaru, are part of what they call the School Living Club, created by Megune and led by Yuri. While Yuki is busy attending classes, creating and seeking out fun after-school activities every day while living at the school, the other girls do their best to keep her safe, because in reality, they are the sole survivors of their school after a zombie outbreak overruns the city. These zombies are the common corporeal revenant type. While they are slow, they are also easily distracted by things like glow sticks, ping pong balls, and backpack alarms. Unlike most zombies, however, these undead students retain their memories and complete actions they most frequently did in life. How intelligent are they, though?
They're playing soccer again.
Don't you think they're just reacting to the noise?
Maybe their last memories of life on Earth are still with them. What's wrong? Maybe someone was running on the track. Maybe so.
They return to school every day, go to the mall, and walk around the soccer field, or football for those non-Americans, and they also really hate the rain.
It's been a long time since we had rain like this. Pouring like it was that day.
The outbreaks seem to come on suddenly, infecting people almost immediately. Whether it is an airborne infection remains unknown. Speculatively, the initial outbreak does seem to be airborne, with many people around Karumi succumbing nearly immediately. As Karumi puts it,
people just started turning into those things, and then the track club was completely surrounded.
Generalized reanimation times to be unknown, however. Later on we learn those who are bitten experience symptoms, death, and complete reanimation in less than an hour. Initial symptoms of exhaustion, fever, and generalized pain, starting from the bite site and spreading throughout the body. Those afflicted lose consciousness within the first hour of infection. The pain soon becomes unbearable, the afflicted thrashing and audibly groaning. It is unknown whether or not anybody has an immunity to this infection, but a person's immune system does seem to determine the time between the initial infection and reanimation. Karumi's schoolgirl crush succumbs to the infection and reanimates within the time it takes for them to leave the soccer field and make their way to the school's rooftop. The outbreak appears to have started at around 0800, with emergency response vehicles and helicopters racing around the town as Megune left for work. Megune began receiving emergency texts and calls from her mother at around this time. News stations were broadcasting the attacks by the start of the school day. During the attacks on September 11, 2001, many students knew of or were actively watching the news in real time shortly after the second plane, United Airlines Flight 175, had made contact with the World Trade Center's South Tower. So it is not at all unreasonable to believe that all students and faculty would become fully aware of the situation well before the first period had even ended. Even though this attack took place in the US, we can safely assume that Japan has similar protocols in place. I definitely give her points for staying off her phone while driving. Unfortunately for Megune, she didn't actually check her phone when she got to school. While she might be going through some issues with her mother, you would think that having the same person ringing you a handful of times might instill some response that something might be wrong. Maybe she was running late and didn't have time to check, I don't know. But she definitely had multiple times to check throughout the school day. While laws in Japan and the US differ, all schools and workplaces in the United States must have emergency plans in place in case of fires, explosions, chemical spills, medical emergencies, natural disasters, bomb threats, or if violence occurs. However, in many states, school emergency response plans do often go unchecked. For example, in the state of Iowa, a law was specifically passed in 2018 requiring public and private school districts to have emergency response plans for responding to natural disasters and active shooters. The plans must be unique for each building in the school district, and each building must conduct annual emergency response drills, so a school seriously lacking in emergency preparedness is not unheard of, or impossible. Instead of a full school lockdown, which would have probably saved a lot of kids' lives, we cut to the end of the school day, and somehow they were able to go through the whole 8 hours without a single zombie interruption. That might be an Academy record.
Already? That's an Academy record. Explain your methods.
Rather surprising, seeing how fast they spread throughout the city, Megune holds back Yuki to retake a test she failed, and as she helps her, she notices Karumi sulking in the hallway. Kurumi has a bit of a heart-to-heart with her about her romantic feelings for an unnamed and clearly disposable boy whom she plays track with. After dealing with her, reassuring her to go along with her heart or whatever, she returns to check on Yuki and her test. It's late in the evening by now, somehow. I have no idea how or why nobody in this school still hasn't discovered what is going on, especially when later on, Yuri says,
Yuri-san, do you always do all this work all by yourself?
Oh no. But for some reason, nobody else showed up today.
It's at this point that she finally decides to check her phone when it goes off for what has to be the umpteenth time that day. If you're gonna ignore your phone, at least put it on silent or turn it off, but I guess she wanted to be an annoyance to everyone around her. She scrolls through a few missed calls and texts, the memo lines saying things like, "Emergency, evacuate now, please reply." Finally deciding to take things a little seriously, she taps a message which directs her to a video the news had broadcasted about massive traffic accidents around the school, attacks taking place at the local shopping mall, and the closure of several train lines. Ever the hungry one, Yuki attempts to go home in an effort to get something to eat. Deciding that might not be the best idea, because zombies, Megane blurts out that all the trains are closed, and rather than just telling her what's going on, they are high schoolers, not little kids, but okay, Megane. Yuki then suggests going to the rooftop to snack on some tomatoes that the garden students are growing, and they head up, even though Megane tells her not to eat anything. Reaching the rooftop, and now somewhat worried for her mom, she makes a very half-hearted attempt at calling her back. There clearly are not any issues going on between them, which means that she should have checked her damn phone by now. The teachers clearly use them for schoolwork or contacting other teachers. That lady on the other end of the line doesn't appear to be her mother, and the last thing she says is,
Hello, miss.
Are you okay? Where are you right now?
Who is that?
Someone else trying to get to the roof?
On the roof? You've gotta lock the door and don't let anyone up there! The teacher's office is...
Suddenly, Kurumi pounds at the door, begging for help. I wouldn't really fault Megane for opening the door, especially since I already blame her for not checking her phone at the start of the school day, which would have probably prevented a lot of these kids' deaths. And then the unnamed and faceless boy and Kurumi would have lived happily ever after, or whatnot.
I'm sure I could find a steady job. Or maybe get married.
That would make you Mrs. Shovel! Would you please forget about the shovel?
And she still doesn't yet understand what is truly going on, as best she knows students are just attacking each other. To let the two in, or I guess out in their case, Megane locks the door at Kurumi's request. Yuki alerts everyone to the chaos unfolding in the sports fields. Taking a look out onto the field, we see the consequences of Megane's actions. Whole lot of kids are dying out there, Megane. Great job. As stated earlier, it seems those initially affected turn immediately, but regardless, things would have been much more contained with a lockdown school, and many more lives would have probably been saved, especially with students taking emergency drills at least once a year. I'm not saying it's only Megane's fault, because the news was on in what looked like to be the principal's office and reception area, so all staff should have seen it, and as I said, all persons should have been clued in, especially with the popularity and availability of cell phones. Megane begins making attempts to call for emergency services as the undead begin beating against the door. Using that sweet teacher's intuition, she shoves a locker against the door with Yuri and Yuki helping. And if things couldn't get any worse, Mr. Faceless Boy decides it's his time to shine and reanimates into one of the undead. There doesn't seem to be a period of death between life and reanimation, so if a person does die, it is for a mere handful of seconds. I would argue that they are indeed dead, as Yuki remarks later on at how cold one of the zombies are when she touches them.
And you're so cold. I'm sorry. I don't know how to help you.
Rather than defending herself, she decides that standing still is her best option as the Zom comes at her, knocking her to the ground. Megane screams at her to run, but she decides that crawling backwards to the railing is a much more preferable option. Megane is stuck holding the barricade with Yuri and Yuki, and they can only watch as the inevitable happens. Grabbing her soon-to-be trusty shovel, and her best friend, she swings it at the guy's head in self-defense, and he falls to the ground. Surprised by her actions, she slams the shovel into the guy's head area repeatedly, with everyone looking on in abject horror. Okay, Kurumi, yeah, I think you're good. That is more than a double tap. Thank you, Yuki, for that. It's not established if the existence of zombies in the media exists in this universe, and many people creating these how-to-beat scenarios seem to fault the characters for not knowing about the existence of zombies. I personally wouldn't blame them. You wouldn't blame the citizens of Bridgeton, Maine for not being prepared for interdimensional mist monsters, or for the people of Barrow, Alaska to be prepared for vampire attacks. Would you blame the citizens of Times Beach, Missouri for unknowingly living in a town poisoned by dioxin? That last one is actually real, by the way. Austin McConnell has a great video on that if you want to know more. Man, Kurumi sure seems unfazed at killing someone who she apparently was crushing pretty hard on. Either that, or she's holding back some emotions much better than most. And as the show often does, it cuts right back to the present with some more happy times. It's around this time that Kei and Miki are making their way to the local mall when Miki spots something. Okay, you can clearly see that some shit is going down, but instead they're just shrugging it off and heading to the mall and having a wonderful time as the world outside begins to fall apart. And we get to meet cute little Chiromaru. It sure doesn't take long for shit to hit the metaphorical fan as screams begin to ring out and patrons flee. Well, 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 if it isn't the consequences of your own actions.
What's happening?
Attention mall customers. An incident has occurred resulting in serious injury. We ask that you please be patient and obey the instructions of our staff as we work to control the situation. Thank you for your cooperation.
The fire!
Hurry! I'm scared! Let's get out of here!
The escalators suddenly shut off, and apparently nobody knows how to walk downstairs, so Miki and Kei are forced to find a different route. Heading to the elevators, because that's definitely a better option if the escalators are no longer working, they wait in a loosely huddled group, but something is causing the elevator to stay on the first floor. I wonder what that could be.
There it goes. So maybe nothing bad happened after all. Uh-huh. Hope so.
Wow, it's almost as if something bad is happening, Kei, but then again, you clearly are not the type to think that anything bad could ever happen to you. The two run throughout the mall, eventually seeking refuge in a recently abandoned shop as the power to the mall is finally cut. Within less than a minute, the mall is fully overrun with the undead. The two do manage to save the doggo, though. But they weren't able to save the granny, though. The two hide out in the mall for an unknown amount of time.
And ship confirmed.
Eventually, Kei makes an attempt to leave. Miki, rightfully terrified, suggests that staying here until help arrives is the better option. And I agree with Miki on that one. The back room that they've locked themselves in is stocked with food and water, and even if half of the boxes shown contained useful supplies, they would still be set for quite a while. I'd put up a sign in every window that suggested that there were survivors inside, but even if nobody comes, by the time you are in need of more supplies, a majority of these zombies would have probably left the mall, making it substantially safer to move around in. This is going off of how much the two know about what is going on, however. While Yuki's group has correctly inferred that the undead frequent places they loved in life, Miki and Kei have not been able to see anything to suggest as such, being locked in a storage room. Kei does have a good counter-argument, however.
And we have to go to the bathroom in a bucket! It's disgusting!
I would certainly hate to have to take a shit in a bucket too. Finally fed up with her situation, Kei abandons Miki and Chiromaru to their fates in an attempt to find rescue, giving her the half-hearted platitude of, "I'll send someone to find you." Or what's left of you, anyway. Meanwhile, back with Yuki, the group heads to the mall on a field trip suggested by Yuki the night before. Kurumi and Yuri decide to take this opportunity to get supplies they might not be able to find at the school. I'm definitely going to give Kurumi some props. Rather than trying to outright incapacitate or kill the zombies, she just knocks them back and continues on towards Megune's car. This is definitely the right thing to do, as wasting energy to try and kill these zombies in this situation would probably just get you killed. There is no point when the school grounds cannot be safely secured and the zombies will walk where they please. Yeah, I'm taking those props back, Kurumi. Standing with your back to the wall and allowing yourself to get surrounded when your mission is to get to the car is idiotic at best and suicidal at worst. You should have known which car was Megune's before heading out into the danger zone. Thankfully, with the help of more plot armor, she looks around for a car with a mustache bear inside it that matches the keyring, and thanks to plot armor, she finds it. Interesting fact, Kurumi is the first person in the series to drive a car without a license. Another interesting fact, although Kurumi is the one who fights the zombies, she is, canonically, ironically, afraid of ghosts. Her name also means walnut, apparently. She gets the car and the group pile in. Using her sick driving skills she never got from having driven a car, they zoom off towards the mall.
It's time to get up, sleepyhead! It's time to get up, sleepyhead! It's time to get up, sleepyhead!
I think I'd rather throw myself to the zombies than listen to that alarm every morning. And after wasting who knows how much water washing her hair, she calls for Chiromaru, who never returns. After having a mental breakdown, we're greeted to that kick-ass theme song. Wonderful.
Why, Kei?
I still stand by that leaving is a terrible idea. You're already safe, you have supplies. If you leave, you're gonna go in search of the exact same things you already have while needlessly throwing your life in danger. After that wonderful theme song, the group reach the mall, several zombies meandering around, and the group somewhat silently scamper off, the little rascals. They lock themselves in a store and pull the gate down, and rather than sticking together, Kurumi, the one who defends the group, immediately runs off alone to the food court in search of canned goods. I don't know about you, but I'd definitely implement a sort of buddy system anytime we left the safety of home base, something I'll discuss a little later. Kurumi has her first run-in with Toromaru, and the two fight over a can of beef cuts. For a dog, he's surprisingly sentient, and rather than grabbing another can, or any can for that matter, she decides to run off after the pup, with zombies audible in the background.
Oh crap!
Remember, we must be very quiet so that we don't disturb our father.
Hey, Shizu, look at that thing over there! I wonder what it is! Loudly do I wonder about it!
Reconnecting with the group, the dog jumps in after Kurumi. After introductions and a very lax decontamination procedure, Yuki very loudly fawns over the young dog. They determine that the dog was not bit, and while it might be worth considering the possibility of cross-species contamination, it's not very likely. But so far, they don't know how much of this infection spreads. People around Kurumi simply turn, and Yuki is shown surrounded by the undead students. How she ever got in that predicament, the show doesn't really say. They leave the store to go on a shopping spree.
You sure this is a good idea? I think it's alright, considering. After all, we are girls, aren't we?
Are you thinking what I'm thinking?
Suicide!
Makeover, 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 makeover.
After their shopping spree, they wander through the mall and Toromaru alerts the group to Miki's presence in the back room. Hoping to find the dog's owner, they head inside, but instead of finding her, Kurumi alerts the Horde instead, having never played Left 4 Dead before. The group runs to escape, and Miki is now alerted to the group's presence. I can't really fault Miki for not having her stuff together, mainly because she's my favorite character, and as far as she knew, she was going to be there, probably indefinitely. However, it's important to have a bug-out bag at the ready, especially in situations like this. She knew she wouldn't be in there forever, and if the undead did manage to break in, she would need to be ready to run or fight. It's clearly not the first time zombies have beat at her door, if you know what I mean. The group quickly reaches the front entrance, blockaded by zombies. Thinking quickly, Yuri throws some glow sticks into the crowd, which somehow works. God damn, that is badass. They manage to make it to safety, dodging zombies that reach for them while Yuki's psyche starts to collapse at the sight of the undead and reality threatens to break down her walls again. Yuki comes to, the group taking refuge in what appears to be a daycare. After a quick break to gather themselves and to lose the Horde, they slip out of the building unnoticed. Meanwhile, Miki finally makes it out of her little hidey hole and finds the glow sticks. In an effort to escape the undead, Miki jumps down from the escalators and onto a piano. Yuki, ever the attentive one, manages to hear Miki's cries for help as the undead surround her senpai, and Toromaru breaks free and runs back into the mall with Yuki right behind them. Yuki's mental state finally breaks, the vision of that day full in her mind. She breaks free from Kurumi and runs for the zombies to save her precious Miki. Yuri, in a last-ditch effort, pulls an alarm which somehow, thanks to plot armor, saves the day. The group escapes the mall unharmed. This whole mall experience would have gone so much more differently in real life, but because the undead get so distracted, even when mere inches away from prey, it makes this apocalypse so much more survivable, something I'll talk about a little more at the end of the video. Yuki running away from the group, while providing for a distraction long enough for Miki to get a hold of herself, also doesn't allow for the group to form a plan of what to do. But this is also a great example of needing to be able to make split-second decisions in order to save lives. The plan became distract the Horde away from Miki long enough for her to slip through them and the group can escape from the mall. And I would say they implemented this plan pretty well. I'd give it about an 8 out of 10.
Excuse me? There's another girl. You didn't see her too, did you? She's about my age? No, you're the only one we found. I see, that's too bad.
Yeah, that's too bad, huh? The new group returns to the school, and after they get some rest, Yuki manages to persuade Megune to let her join their group. Yuki gets Miki some water, and Megune, Miki, and Yuki trade formalities and discuss her joining of the club, but Miki is still rather confused.
Really? So the school is exactly like it was? Oh, I guess not. Well, I guess nobody'll mind if we go in. Is she saying there are still other kids around? Maybe I just misunderstood. See? Look at all these instruments! Huh? What's wrong? Nothing. You're right. It's really cool. Hmm? I knew it. Those poor kids.
Oh, that's sad, huh? Yuki gives Miki the unnecessary tour, leaving the door open for Megune. Surprised that all is as it was, she follows Yuki. But Miki soon discovers everyone is truly dead, and she becomes increasingly confused about the whole situation.
Can you hold it? No, wait! Don't you want a cute nickname, Mikun? No, I don't need my name to be cute. But you're such a cute girl. Isn't that right, Megune? Don't you think she's cute too?
Don't force her if she doesn't like it, Yuki-chan.
Huh? You don't think she's cute, Megune?
Well, of course I do. But that's not really the point.
Hey, don't take this the wrong way, but I'm not understanding any of this. Huh? I'm sorry. I need to ask you something. I'm a little confused. Who's Megune?
In a real situation, a person suffering from severe psychosis like this is not a safe person to be around. When they snap, and it's always a when, not an if, they become a danger to themselves and those around them. She's already had her psyche falter several times so far, and anything that contradicts Megune's existence is guaranteed to break her. But it's not like none of this is known by the group, and they let her continue on with her delusions. I'm not a psychiatrist.
I'm not a scientist. I don't claim to be a scientist. I'm just an average dude. We know you're not a scientist, pal. Let's move on.
But letting someone continue to suffer psychosis, especially in stressful situations like a zombie apocalypse, is just going to get you killed. It is easy to argue keeping Yuki in this state is more beneficial, but these girls have the overwhelming power of plot armor, so we'll have to see how this goes. Miki agrees to play along under threat of Yuri, and Yuki suggests organizing a sports competition. The group readily agrees, with a nervous Miki joining in. The group goes about setting up some competitions, and everyone has a great time. It's hard to stress the importance of de-stressing and relaxing in a zombie apocalypse. Having fun and getting good rest is essential for your mental state, apocalypse or not. You could have all the supplies in the world, but if you have no will to survive, you won't last long. And with that, Miki decides to join the School Life Club after a day of having fun. I mean, I can't really blame her. What other options does she realistically have? Just say no and leave the school and try to survive on her own? That is somehow a worse idea than Kei leaving them all. Yuki suggests a test of courage. Needing more supplies, Yuri agrees and they use it as an excuse to grab some snacks and books. Man, you'd really think they'd bring some bigger bags or a wheelbarrow or something to carry out as many supplies as possible if they are not planning on clearing the school out. This brings us back to my initial point. How safe is the school really? They have solar power and water reservoirs, but their barricades consist of stacked desks tied together.
Maybe the magic of friendship can help you. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have some chaos to wreak.
It's rather feasible for the students to have access to at least a small stockpile of wood, as many high schools in Japan do take handicraft courses as a compulsory study, and we do see their front boarded up somewhat. You don't want any spaces between your boards though, as it gives the zombs unnecessary handholds to pull the boards apart. With all this free time they suddenly find themselves with, you would think they would spend a little more time ensuring their safety.
Courage is the test! Courage is the test! Fear is the obstacle, and courage is the test! Have you noticed that we don't see them much at night?
You're right. Maybe they all go back home when it gets dark.
Do you think they really have memories?
Hey! You could pretend to be scared.
Huh? Is brave Karumi afraid the monsters will hear? Oh no, monsters!
Jeez, maybe we should have left her behind.
I'm surprised, Quick Quap. Really? You thought nothing of the countless people that died for you, Quick Quap? By the way, the quick quapping is you and your high horse.
They search for supplies with a surprise appearance of Megune. Her delusions again. They grab some food and make their way to the library, munching on some snacks.
Yuki! These are awesome! They grow 20 times their size! It says right here, 20 times, not just 2! They're so cool! Amazing technology, right?
Is that what you called us over here for?
Yeah! Cool, huh?
Should we be concerned that Yuki has never seen a balloon before? As they look for some books, Yuki straight up Naruto runs towards a zombie. Good one, Yuki, very cool. Lucky for Yuki, Megune was there to help her hide. Here we get a good view of how well the undead can see, and while we already know they do have decent enough vision, it shows us that they can see just as well at night as they can during the day. Not that the protagonists would be able to indefinitely know this.
Megune, I'm scared. Is brave Karumi afraid the monsters will hear? Oh no, monsters!
Did she learn anything from her test of courage? No, probably not. We find out that winter is apparently shortly approaching, but they don't make much of an attempt to prepare, and like everything else essential, they put it off for their future selves to deal with. Man, it is just bad decision after bad decision with these girls. We don't know how long they have until winter, but with temperatures reaching 30 to 40 Fahrenheit, they will need to figure out something quickly if winter is approaching. And there it is again. Her psyche breaks, and while Megane verifies their story in her delusions, she still attempts to sneak out to Megane and ask her where she was on that car ride back to school. Yuki returns to the door where Megane had died behind, begging for more verification of her existence. She manages to get a hold of her emotions and her psyche and returns to her peppy self. Returning to the plot, Yuki, after knocking over some papers, gets it in her head to write some letters, using the balloons that she, purchased, to send the letters off.
What's all this stuff? Oh, wow! Take a look at all this, you guys! Who wants to write some letters?
Kurumi decides to go on a different route and manages to capture a pigeon to send her letter.
Okay then, introducing Arnold Hatonishiki II! Where did the second come from?
RIP to that first pigeon, though. This actually proves to be a good thing for the group, and it helps Miki to come to terms with her loss of Kei. Unable to sleep, Miki and Yuri decide to look for whatever it is that this key unlocks. They hunt around, and the mystery of the outbreak slowly comes together. Their efforts shortly awaken Yuki, and she does her best to help them look. Deciding that now is a good time, and even though she was always so adamant against it, Yuri attempts to break Yuki's psyche. Miki, now deciding Yuri was right all along, changes the subject in order to keep her sane. If you're going to do something like this, doing it spur of the moment with no preparations is one of the dumbest things Yuri has done. Doing it in a safe space for Yuki, where she feels the most safe and comfortable and secure, is your best bet, and making sure everyone is aware of what is going on and keeping yourself closest to the exits should things go wrong is the best option. We find out that right before that picture was taken, Megane had apparently died, and it sparked something inside of Yuri to make Yuki remember. Again, spur-of-the-moment decisions when you have the time to think things out could get you killed. Even with more and more zombies gathering every day, the group pushes it away like it's nothing. Once again, Yuki's efforts will save their lives. Behind this log cabinet, they discover what really happened.
As Special Agent Rusty Clark would say, here's what happened.
This chest now proves beyond a shadow of a doubt that the government was, at least, the creator of this infection, and it either escaped or was purposely deployed on its citizens to test the outcome, but that latter seems rather less likely. Rather than do anything productive with this new information, they decide to have a beach day. Since this is a high school anime, Gala ala lali sivan desten du van desten vand. What a shame. Had they actually dealt with it today, it would have probably prevented a whole lot of loss and grief. Toromaru, being the smartest doggo that there ever was, escapes his collar and sneaks down to the basement. And this is the ultimate fate of Megane, a lost soul in the school's basement. Toromaru's actions here will, in part, end it all for the group. It also shows that the infection is indeed cross-species contaminable.
When this whole mess began, it was after school hours. There weren't many students hanging around on campus, so not many people got infected. But as time goes by, more and more students who weren't here when it happened find their way back to the school.
Oh, so now the undead begin to worry you, now that it's too late to do anything about it. As more and more people were found and infected by the undead, those who were students returned to the school, some primitive part of their brains telling them to do so, to complete and fulfill the tasks they did in life.
So, those barricades you guys made, are they still holding up? Well, we used all the tables and chairs that we could, and we're out of boards and nails to hold them together. But don't be afraid. They're not just any old barricades, because the hope within our hearts and Megane's love will hold them together. It'll be hard for them to break through something that strong.
Maybe the magic of friendship can help you.
And now the barricades come into question as well. You really should have thought about that before shit was literally seconds from hitting the fan. All you could do now is hide and hope that the horde doesn't come for you. Yuki immediately notices Toromaru is missing. Frightened, Miki, Kurumi, and Yuki begin looking for him. Even with the dangers the rain brings, Kurumi soon ventures into the dangerous areas of the school in search of a dog that, for all they know, is of no interest to the undead. Once again, this is somewhat reasonable. The importance of a dog, or any pet, is pretty much unparalleled. The same goes for anything that a person is massively emotionally attached to, be it a blanket belonging to a loved one or a keychain.
He might be small, but he's a member of the club too. You'll make sure he's safe, right, Teach?
Ooh, yeah, about that. Rather than protect the group, Megane is the one who tears it apart, and this action proves fatal. Once again, the buddy system is detrimental for survival, especially when going into dangerous areas where the infected are not cleared out of. but you don't want to bring someone into a situation where they would be more of a problem than a help to you. I can understand looking around in areas you know to be safe, but always be on guard, and when confronted with the situation Kurumi was, heading back to the group would probably save your life. Kurumi manages to return to the group, infected, and much worse for wear. By the time Kurumi returns to the group and gets her wound treated, she is beginning to succumb to the infection and loses consciousness. But before she does, Kurumi lets it slip to the group the fate of Toromaru and Magune. Kurumi experiences a fever dream, which is probably partially what causes the screaming fits in infected individuals as the infection takes its toll. That's pretty smart, handcuffing both her wrist and her ankle to the couch, although I'm not sure where they even managed to get the handcuffs, but having a designated area for treating and dealing with those recently infected is an essential part of a safe zone. But the couch is movable, and she could probably still move around even handcuffed to the couch. Yuri, remembering the promise she made to Kurumi at the mall, pulls out a knife.
This is a knife.
This is a good idea, again, having a plan in place should you become infected. That way loved ones will know that euthanizing you is something that you would want, and it makes the process much easier for a loved one to go through with. I would recommend having one specific person in the group be the one who euthanizes infected individuals for the sake of mentality.
Kurumi-senpai said she saw Megune in the emergency evacuation area, didn't she?
Yes, but how does that help us now?
According to this, there's supposed to be some medicine down there.
Medicine? Where?
Right here.
This means Magune knew in some part of the government's dealings in this, and that she specifically sought out this area, either managing to escape the undead before her death, or her infected mind brought her down here to get treatment. As it begins to rain, the undead finally make an actual attempt, and with ease they break into the school. The rain splashing against Yuki's face reminds her of the day that she lost Magune. Yet again, her psyche breaks, and as the undead begin spilling into the hallways, the memories come flooding back to her fully.
Maybe the magic of friendship can help you.
The undead shamble throughout the school, sniffing out the fellow survivors in record speed. Yuri manages to lock herself into the room with a handcuffed Kurumi just before the infected could get in. Surprisingly, Yuki seemingly comes to terms with the situation and barely saves a grieving Miki in the nick of time. Miki manages to bring back the old Yuki for a bit, managing to calm herself down before grabbing Kurumi's shovel and heading for the basement. Once again, good on Miki for batting aside the zombies rather than wasting energy and time on incapacitating or killing them. Time is of the essence right now, and getting that medicine is of top priority if you want any chance to save Kurumi. This is sort of a good example of Murphy's Law. Anything that can go wrong will go wrong, because it's literally all going wrong. Kay finally proves to be useful for once, Miki using her CD player to distract the gathering horde long enough for her to escape into the basement. It's a good idea, and I would have brought more items to distract— oh hey, they did. She brought some ping pong balls, that's good.
Oh man, we really messed up Megune's car. I hope she's got it in her to forgive us.
It's not that bad, and I have no doubt that Megune would understand.
Maybe Megune knows what you did to her car and she wants vengeance.
Hey Ree, I've been thinking, all these mindless things all around us. Do you think they're still conscious?
I don't know. Do you think that's possible, Kurumi?
No, I don't. No.
Why not?
Because I can't live with that. All those things used to be real people, our friends and people we loved. They're gone, but not gone. And there's nothing we can do for them. Ree, you have to keep your promise. Don't forget it. I'm trusting you to make sure that doesn't happen to me.
If there's one thing to know, it's getting stuck on the how or what if will get you killed. It doesn't much matter, just that it is. It's the same if what if the world was a simulation. It doesn't change the fact that your actions will still have a real enough feeling consequence. A 12-year simulated prison sentence wouldn't feel any different to you than a real one. Miki puts an undead Megune out of her misery, and right as she does so, the emergency power kicks in and the horde moves in for the kill.
The reserve power ran out, so of course the whole relaxation center stops waking up the bloody test subjects.
Murphy's Law is hard at work here. The group might have actually fared a little better had they worked half as hard as Murphy does here. It's kind of strange that the undead somehow understand what the voice over the intercom said and know to just immediately run to the basement. The bloody handprints prove somebody tried to open the box, and Megune was the only person down here. She had the key for the emergency plan, and it's safe to assume that she also opened the crate. As Miki tries to escape with the medicine, the undead slowly surround her and eventually traps her in a room. The undead break the door down, and she manages to climb onto some shelves in one last attempt to cling on to life just a little bit longer. There's not much you could truly do here. I would try to lure them to the far end and maybe try to run around the group and close the door. If you did manage to do it, it wouldn't hold for long, but maybe long enough for you to get away. Plus, a bite won't necessarily mean the end for you, and you could be treated. Yuki finally realizes what she needs to do, and she follows the ghost of Megune and makes her way to the broadcasting booth. Her final wall comes down and Yuki finally comes to terms with everything that has happened and allows herself to mourn. Good on you, Yuki. I was genuinely surprised my first time watching this back when the show came out. My bet was on her snapping and killing everyone, or at least getting everyone killed through her actions. Using a fire extinguisher as a distraction, Yuki manages to make it to the broadcasting booth before getting cornered. And who should save the day but Undead Nightmare Toromaru? These zombies do retain memories, and Toromaru's protective nature kicked in before the urge to spread the infection could, but it's still a little BS plot armor either way. Once inside, she manages to lock Toromaru into a cupboard, and using the microphone, she addresses the zombies in the school. Somehow, the undead leave, moved by her speech or some such nonsense. Even though the undead were seconds away from getting Miki, they just abandon her and they leave the school. How wholesome and heartwarming. Miki manages to bring the medicine to an infected Kurumi, and they administer it to her and Toromaru respectively.
All right, you win. I see you've played knifey spoony before.
If the dog can succumb, then certainly the medicine should work on him too. However, the dog had fully turned and the medicine is for stage 1 infection. Unless these zombies are stage 1. Ooh. As we learn in the manga, after her infection, Kurumi no longer has the ability to feel pain from any sort of injury. Due to her infection, her skin is cold, and the zombies will ignore her as long as she doesn't loudly call out to them. This can be used to her advantage in various scenarios, but it is damaging to her psychologically because it is a constant reminder to her of what she is slowly becoming. It is eventually revealed that, due to having undergone this treatment, Kurumi is suffering from a mutant strain of the infection, and because of this, both Shiko Aozoki and Randall Corporation consider her a key to develop a possible cure. However, her infection is also causing her body to slowly break down. I won't include this tidbit in our How to Beat scenario, however, because I'm strictly following the anime adaptation. The manga differs just slightly enough from the anime that things would change for us. For example, Miki loses an eye, and mainly there are other important supporting characters, just as some examples. So Kurumi recovers from her infection after several intense hours, and by God, the dog is fine too! It's all happy days and sunshine for the students at the school life club. Oh shit. They bury the dog in the garden, and the group cries over their loss. I'm not heartless, so here's a moment of silence for the animated dog. The group decides on what to do next. The power is out from the storm, and the reserve power is low.
The reserve power ran out!
Turns out Megane left the group a map of potential safe havens to go, should they be forced out of their home. Yeah, that is a lot to take in, especially being a group of women in a zombie apocalypse. There's a sort of safety stigma in these scenarios.
Oh, man, he fucking said it. You're the one saying no one here is thinking about raping anyone. Wow, you talking about vibes is the only thing that's rapey going on right now.
Dude, nothing was rapey till you brought up the rapey vibes.
The one who smelt it dealt it, dog.
True that, dude.
One who denies it supplies it.
I know, it's farts, I get it.
Guys. Jay's not rapey. Jay couldn't rape a fly.
Hey, everyone!
Look at this! Yuki, you can't just wander in and... Hey, what did I say about snacks?
No, forget about that! Look at this!
There's a bite mark on it.
I don't care how hungry you are, Senpai. That's just wrong. Well, it wasn't me.
You're right. It doesn't even look like it's human.
Was it Toromaru?
I don't think so. They're too small to be Toromarus. But... okay. That means there's another dog down there somewhere.
Of course! I'd always wondered about that. What he was doing down in the evacuation area. Yeah, maybe he went down because he was only going to see his friend.
That's it. It's gotta be. I mean, why else would he go down into such a dangerous place?
So apparently there's another doggo, but fuck looking for it. By the next scene, they've forgotten about it entirely, so who knows. Hopefully the poor pup isn't stuck somewhere, because that's kind of fucked up that they didn't even bother stopping to look for the dog. The group packs up and leaves, deciding to have a graduation ceremony for themselves to turn a new leaf. It helps you move on with the things that have happened while learning from the mistakes you've made and using them to move forward. Life is kind of like a Jenga tower.
Oh, I know just what you mean. Life is like Jenga.
What?
No, listen. You're supposed to pull out these blocks, and the blocks on the bottom are the most important, but all anyone ever cares about are whether or not the blocks on the top are gonna fall over.
That's crap. Your analogy is crap. Everything is crap.
Life is kind of like a Jenga tower. You pull out a piece from the past and use it to build the tower higher, and when it falls over, you just pick it up and build it again. Then you teach your kids and hope that they can learn from you to build an even better one. It never really ends.
So they graduate and say their goodbyes to Megane and the school, piling into Megane's car with their supplies. Oh, and who's this? Look who finally showed up! Kay, you've made it to school! It took you long enough. I mean, I never said she'd come back alive, did I? If that is a zombified Kay, it's kinda sad that she was just left like that, but Kay is left to her own undead devices and Miki just moves on. They were supposed to be really close friends, but I'm just saying. I had at least euthanized infected friends and family members, but I guess Miki's moved on, for the most part. As I mentioned a little earlier about how survivable this apocalypse is, well, it was announced on August 5th of this year that a company called Yen Press licensed School Live and are in production of a sequel to the anime called School Live Letters. Honestly, this is a terrible idea. I'm the world's biggest Portal fan, but I don't necessarily want a sequel to the game. And like School Live, it's for the same reason. It ended perfectly. It's great to think up your own ideas on what will happen next, but when a company canonizes what happens next, most of the time it's a major letdown and it ruins expectations. So, how would our actions change who lives and who dies? Had Megane checked her phone when she had gotten to school, she could have alerted the rest of the staff to what was happening and locked down the school, since the attacks were happening all over the city. While the total zombification of the town wasn't complete until late afternoon, all students and faculty would have been clued into the events vis-a-vis cell phones and concerned parents trying to get in touch with their kids during those first hours of class. With a school locked down, those students that turned could be dealt with fairly easily, locking them in empty classrooms until the faculty learned more about what they were dealing with. And since this was a government-created pandemic, and the school was secretly used as an emergency base, there should have been proper steel gates that the undead could not knock down, or more preferably, solid brick walls all around the school. This way, the safe zone has a bit of a buffer between the building itself and the undead. Using shatterproof glass might not be strictly legal, as in the event of a fire, students may need to break windows to get out, should the windows get stuck. I don't know much about building codes in Japan. We don't know if the school was built prior to their decision to use it as a base, or if it was repurposed. I believe it was built specifically for this base because of the basement modifications. I would use the wood from the woodworking class to either barricade the main entrance or wall off the stairwells. Using proper barricades would prevent the horde from overrunning the safe house should or when the undead breach the building. Killing the undead would be a difficult task as handguns are banned outright. Only shotguns and air rifles are legally allowed, and there are laws regulating how many gun shops can be in certain areas, and fresh cartridges can only be purchased when you return the spent cartridges from your last visit. So hand-to-hand combat is your only feasible option. Faculty should be letting the students know of the true situation and be retrieving the medication to save students who had recently turned or were infected and prevent the infection from spreading. Even taking the differences in infection type in the manga into account, those who were infected and treated could still be easily rounded up and either disposed of, tested, or treated properly should a real cure be discovered. With things like CRISPR and Cas9, this might not be too much of a problem depending on whether or not a person who took the medicine is actually dead or not. Once the barricades are in place, there should be no real reason to ever leave the school until the government comes in to rescue them, as the sequel shows, and I highly doubt the military would firebomb those locations for any reason short of being overrun. The school is a base specifically designed for this scenario, so those places the military designated would be the first points of contact by the Japanese military. The school should be jam-packed with useful supplies left in the basement, but if the massive surplus of supplies do run out, the mall would be a good place to check for supplies. Speaking of which, Miki and Kei should have just stayed in the mall, hung out, and put up some SOS signs in the windows, and just hold out until help arrives. But once supplies do run out, doing some supply runs in the mall might be their only option. Because the zombies frequented the places they did in life, it's possible that the undead would also return to their homes at night, and grabbing supplies after dark, the two could slowly expand their safe zone, gather up supplies, and have a real chance at holding out. Having an escape route should the undead find you, they could either attempt to clear the base or look for a whole new place to set up shop. Once the power runs out, if the mall is not connected to a solar grid, there's a lot of countryside in Japan and many of the zombies would probably not be leaving town, so finding a place to live in the country could be just as feasible as well. Plus, many of those homes might have wood furnaces, so your cabin home would be quite warm in the winter. Realistically, and as the sequel shows again, the government should be able to come in and have this whole mess cleaned up well before a year passes, cure the recently infected and cold arrest, and those words do hold some weight. Japan is ranked 5th globally in overall military power after the United States, Russia, China, and India, and its defense budget is ranked 6th in 2021 ranking of 140 countries by the Global Firepower Rating site. And while it might take a few years for the actual rebuilding of damaged infrastructure, I say that the situation in Gakkou-Gurashi has been beaten. Remember, the apocalypse can come at any time. Be ready, and as Adventures with Purpose says, hug the ones you love.